I could deal with chewing while talking. Because we're not going for being fancy. Anyway, let's have a look at some stuff. This one's for the people who are diagnosed with Asperger syndrome out there. These are some ideas, okay? Please comment if you can relate to this. This is an imaginary person, okay? Made up as an idea, okay? The person is standing next to another person wearing noise cancelling headphones, and the other person says, "Are you deaf?" And replies, "They're wearing headphones to block everything out so they can hear you better. Technically your voice is at a lower volume also, but the other sounds were interfering with the ability to concentrate on your voice. So was in the habit of not looking at people's faces so as to hear what they were saying, and subsequently was missing body language and the social context, and so didn't know what people's intentions were. And due to having to do that growing up, wasn't able to learn how to process intentions at the same speed as other people, and technically figured out intentions after the fact. In a big post hoc analysis that took hours and involved melting down a bit, because in addition to that, the shirt really was scratchy and the sun really was bright. And also, there was a shit ton of stuff going on. And don't actually have a hearing impairment so much as there appears to be a filtration issue with proximal versus non-proximal stimuli. That's an important point. Having the same intensity to the point where language has been operating at a different speed, which it usually does anyway, and struggles to keep up. The result is it's either been focusing on your facial expressions or your words, or total ignorance of you, because let's face it, it's too fucking loud everywhere. So is that autism or sensory processing disorder? This is interesting. For autistic or Asperger's people out there, do sounds that are further away or distal have a higher perceptual volume than sounds that are closer or proximal? Is there an illusion where sometimes, if not always, sounds that are closer to you are perceptually at a lower volume than sounds that are further away? Example to test this might be, say you're playing a song on your phone in your room, and you don't think the song is loud. You don't think the volume is loud. But you close the door to the room and you leave. And you go some distance away. And for some reason, it sounds really loud again. Like it sounds loud for the first time. You didn't notice it had a high volume. And the sounds that are near you, where you actually went, aren't that high at all. Have you ever been told that the sound of your voice, the volume of your voice changes too much, that sometimes it's too loud and sometimes it's too quiet. Have you been in a room with someone and that person was talking to you and you really wanted to pay attention to them, but driving up the street outside your house was a truck going wah, 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 wah. You know, the brakes were screeching and the engine was going off. It was, ah! Now, those kinds of experiences can be distracting for anyone. However, logically, it does not make sense for a distal sound to have a higher perceptual volume than a proximal one, particularly if it's in a contained space. Because in a contained space, that sound will be reverberating off the walls. Once you leave that space and close the door, there's no escape for it. So why would the volume be louder? Why would the volume go up if you left the room? It should be louder in the room as the sound keeps reverberating. Why would that perceptually be different? Why would that be different if your hearing was tested and they found that it didn't do that? That your ears actually function as though distal sounds were lower volume than proximal ones. Yet for some reason in your practical life, it's the other way around. And for some reason, that story is true. At least some of the time. Have people with Asperger's ever found when they weren't being divertistically bombarded by the label and told, don't do your stimming, or whatever it is that they do, that they call stimming on those various and sundry gameplay and labels they've got for it, that when they're in a room with no loud sounds, no distractions, and they're talking to someone, they're actually able to look at them in the face. They're more likely to, but they're habitually less likely to because of all the other occasions they've been bombarded. Is the language issues in autism or Asperger's secondary to the sensory ones? And it sounds like it might be. It sounds like on the spectrum that the high functioning ones, or Aspies, are hyperfluent. They can process language just fine. Language is processed just fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There appears to be, based on the analysis of how pronouns actually operate, the history of pronouns, as well in the English language. Don't know about the other languages, but definitely English. There appears to be no language problem in Asperger's. There's no language problem. That's a myth. There is no theory of mind problem because they're capable of acknowledging that other people exist. There is no self-other distinction problem unless there's some very strange set of circumstances, which typically involve narcissistic characters, as it turns out. And the difficulty in perceiving intentions gets resolved through post hoc analysis. With Asperger's, are they referring to sensory processing disorder that has a specific type of sensory processing issue that might lead to the misunderstanding of the other stuff? So all the other stuff is secondary. Is the world really too loud? Is there some other reason why it might be the case that distal sounds have a higher perceptual, not sensory, because remember, when the ears are checked, they're normal. High distal sounds, distal sounds, so sounds that are further away, might have higher perceptual decibels or volume than proximal ones, without it being the ears that does it. Why? Be curious to know what you think.